The wheels have well and truly come off Tottenham's season. Hey guys, welcome to the channel, welcome to another video. Yes, today's video is going to centre around Tottenham Hotspur, who several weeks ago had pretty much won the league in November, hadn't they? I'm only joking. Only a few Tottenham fans truly believed that they had won the league in November. But in all seriousness, the season was starting off extremely well, in a dream possible start to life under new manager Ange Postecoglu for Tottenham fans. Postecoglu hit the ground running. His brand of football was refreshing. His brand of football was intense. His brand of football was exciting. Tottenham were once again an exciting and must-see team once again in England's top-flight division, only for the wheels to come off their season in recent weeks. Tottenham haven't won a game in the last 5 games. They've took the lead in all 5 of those games, but only have 1 point out of a possible 15 to show for it. Just what has gone wrong? What are the issues at Spurs? Why Spurs fans should have kept their feet firmly on the ground in this particular instance, and everything else in between, and is it sustainable, and what will the future hold for Tottenham and for Ange Postecoglu? That's what we're going to be looking into in this video. So please do leave a like on the video if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're new or want to see more content like this. Both things are always very greatly appreciated. And of course, leave your comments, your opinions, your feelings, everything else in between down below in that comment section, because I'm sure they'll make for great and interesting reading. But for now, let's get back to the video. Let's talk Tottenham Hotspur. Like I say, it started off as a dream start to his reign as manager for Ange Postecoglu, and Spurs fans finally had a team that they could be proud of and they could be actually excited to watch week in, week out, rather than the boring football that they've been playing since post the Mauricio Pochettino era. You know, the likes of Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte, Nuno Espirito Santo. The least said about him, the better, as far as what Tottenham fans are concerned. It was exciting. It was a brand of football that they could actually enjoy to watch week in, week out, rather than the football that was played under those managers I explained and taught and said before. And things started off brilliantly well. The one thing I've always said about Spurs this season, people will say that they had a very easy start, but the one thing I always said about Spurs constantly is the fact that they were at least beating teams that they should have been beating. Or even if they weren't playing up to 100%, they were managing to somehow, some way find the mentality, the confidence, whatever you want to call it, to win those games deep in injury time. Tottenham of old wouldn't have won half the games that they had won this season in previous years. But under Ange, with the way that they were playing, with the kind of confidence that was building game by game, the way that they were calm, they were more composed, the way that they were seemingly just going about their business, not worrying, not being all Spursy, not being all calamitous or anything along those lines, it was a refreshing watch as far as what Spurs fans were concerned. And even I, as a neutral, could only hold my hands up and say that Spurs looked good in those opening weeks. The proof would obviously be later on down the line, because as we said constantly, the starting 11 of Spurs looks very good. The starting 11 of Spurs looked very good, but it was what was going to happen beyond that starting 11. It was what was going to happen later on down the line when the intensity and the pressure would grow. What would happen when injuries started to come? Because obviously injuries were going to be a natural part of anyone's season, especially Spurs. And unfortunately against Chelsea, everything sort of fell apart. The rug was whipped out from underneath them in that one game where they picked up most of their injuries. Suspensions obviously occurred, and they lost their first game of the season. It was a perfect storm in most ways, in all of the bad ways for Spurs, because the suspensions, they happened. They were rightly so. Maybe not in the way that they were done, in 2 yellow cards to Udogie in particular. Maybe both of them could have gone a lot earlier in the game, but they occurred. Then the injuries happened. 2 big injuries. Mickey van der Ven and James Maddison. 2 top signings that they made in the summer two of their most important players to the way that Ange Postecoglu likes to play. Again, perfect storm. They go on, they lose against Wolves. They got absolutely battered pillar to post against Wolves. The fact that Wolves couldn't finish made it a 2-1 scoreline in favour of Wolves, in which they got the result and they were worthy winners of that. But the result somewhat flattered Tottenham, because if Wolves could finish, they could have actually got more goals. Weeks after, losing again to Aston Villa. They actually played better in that game, and it was probably one of them games where, somewhat against the run of play, they just weren't able to take their chances. Against Manchester City, no one gave them a chance in hell of getting anything out of that game because of the way that they like to play. They managed to get a point. And against West Ham on Thursday night, they took the lead again. They couldn't finish their dinner. They couldn't finish their chances. And West Ham ultimately made them pay in the second half. I admire Ange and for everything that he's done so far for Tottenham. I admire the way that obviously he's given them an identity. He's given them an exciting way of playing. I like the way that he handles himself in press conferences and handles himself to the media. He looks like a real good bloke, a real good down-to-earth bloke that you can go and have a pint with down your local. He is a very good, charismatic, likeable guy. And I admire the way he's playing. Don't necessarily admire the way that he doesn't really adapt. I feel like Tottenham are chaotic. And that can be a good thing. Against most teams, being chaotic can be a good thing. My only issue is that sometimes you've got to control the chaos. I feel like against Manchester City, Tottenham were able to control their chaos a little bit. It wasn't as gung-ho, it wasn't as mad, overboard as what we were used to seeing from Spurs. It was more controlled, and it had to be. Otherwise, Man City definitely would have ran more rampant than what they had done. But like against Chelsea, when they were down to 9 men, playing that stratospheric high line where they weren't even probably in their own half was absolutely insane. It was just baffling to me the way that he did that. But if there's more control to their madness and to their chaos, there will be more of a balance there for Spurs, I feel. And I know it's not the finished article because, as I said before, the squad depth was always going to tell. There needs to be more time given to Ange Postecoglu. But at the same time, if he wants to get from where he started to the final product, he obviously has to build in stages. He can't just go from the beginning to the finish. He can't do that. He's got to learn. He's got to adapt. And the one manager that I compare him to, not in terms of quality, not in terms of being better than or as equal to, but in terms of how he started his managerial career in England, is very similar to the way that Postecoglu started his managerial career in England, is that Postecoglu's come in at a team that last year finished, 8th? Similar to a Jurgen Klopp, who came in, finished 8th. And they both tried to implement a style of play on their teams with the squad that they had at their disposal that ultimately wasn't going to necessarily completely work because of the way the league is and because of the way that the players are. Jurgen Klopp, when he first came to Liverpool, tried to implement this real gung-ho, gegenpress style of play, high intensity, high pressure, and it would work. It would work for 70 minutes, for 70 odd minutes. And then what would happen is teams would slowly, if the game wasn't already over, if Liverpool hadn't already blown the team out of the water within 70 minutes, teams would slowly start growing into the game beyond that 70-minute mark, and Liverpool would be tired, Liverpool would be all out of ideas, and the opposition would just hit them. And it would often be a sucker punch to the point where those teams, whether they were the bigger teams in the division or the smaller teams in the division, would often get something from that game. That's what would happen in the first season or two with Liverpool. Klopp had to learn to adapt. He had to learn to adapt to the league. He had to learn to adapt to what he was inheriting from previous manager Brendan Rodgers when he first arrived at the club. That's what he had to learn. Postecoglu's got to do the same. He's got to learn that the players that he's brought in are brilliant. He's made some fantastic signings, some brilliant signings that are probably in the top 5, top 10 signings of the season. I think Vicario has been absolutely excellent. I think he goes a little bit under the radar because he's a goalkeeper, but I don't think anyone was expecting him to have the start to his Tottenham career that he's actually having. He's been brilliant in my opinion. Mickey van der Ven has been phenomenal, obviously since picking up his injury, unfortunately. I think he's been brilliant, and obviously you can see that they really do miss his pace in that high line when he's not there. James Maddison, I still can't believe that Tottenham managed to pick him up for about 40 to 50 million in an easy way that they did for a guy who's so creative and has been arguably the best player in the Premier League, barring maybe one or two others. But signing of the season wise, he's probably been that guy until he picked up that injury. So there is a lot there to work with. There's a lot there to be intrigued by. But he's got to learn to adapt. And one of the biggest stats that obviously has come out this week is the fact that Tottenham in their last 5 games have taken the lead in all 5 of their last games, only to drop points from those losing positions. It's not good enough, and he needs to learn to adapt. And with all that being said, if he doesn't learn, he's not going to get to the finished article, because as ruthless as it may be and as bad as what it may be, you need to build in stages. You need to show progression, and sometimes these people that are behind the scenes and pull all the strings at football clubs don't often see that. I think the media attention on him has been heavily favourable. Don't get me wrong. I understand why. Don't get me wrong. I think that he is, like I say, he's a very likeable person. I get that his style of play is influential. I get that his style of play is infectious and it's very enjoyable to watch. I get why the media attention has been mainly positive on him, but he does need to be criticised where he needs to be criticised. Against Chelsea, there was absolutely no reason whatsoever to play that extremely high line. He needed to be criticised, and especially for losing the way that they did, he needed to be criticised. He needed to be criticised for not adapting in certain positions. Maybe his team selection against Wolves, for example. Maybe certain things that happened in the Aston Villa game. Against Man City, seemed to be okay. Against West Ham, that seemed to be the fault of the strikers that he doesn't yet fully possess. There does need to be time, there does need to be depth, but there's no doubt about it. The wheels have really come off Tottenham's season in recent games, and it potentially could happen. And we all knew this dip was coming. We all knew that this dip was coming with Spurs. We just now need to know whether or not this is going to continue, or whether or not there's going to be a level of evolution and adaptation from Postecoglu to obviously accommodate for the Premier League and for the squad that he has. It's clear that he didn't want most of these players that he's being forced to play, because he wanted them to be gotten rid of, and he was never going to have them in his starting lineup. But with the way that obviously the season pans out, with the way that injuries occur, obviously football is a squad game, and these next few games are going to be massive for Spurs. They start off with Newcastle on Sunday. That's going to be a very intriguing game to watch. Two sides hit with big injury concerns and everything else that's gone along with their season to be inconsistent so far. But to say that obviously Spurs have had an incredible start to the season, but yet are level on points with a team like Manchester United is madness to me. And so we just got to see how this period of adaptation works, and whether or not the bounce back is real, whether or not he can get a tune out of these players, whether or not he can adapt completely to accommodate for these players before obviously the big name players and the main players obviously come back into this Spurs setup to obviously accommodate more so for Postecoglu's style of play and his brand of football. that will help Tottenham's season going forward. Right now, there are positive signs. There are also a few concerning signs. I think he can get them back on track. He just needs to adapt. There's nothing wrong with adapting. Klopp's done it. Guardiola's done it. All the best managers learn to adapt. If his stubbornness continues, though, and he continues to play that way that he is doing, and he doesn't try and control the chaos a bit more that Tottenham can inflict on a team, he won't get to the finished article, in my opinion. So, it's a good building process. It's a good foundation to build upon, but he needs to adapt in order to maintain progression and in order to maintain the progression and the projection of where Tottenham want to be come the end, or come the main final product, shall I say, of this Tottenham Hotspur team. But those are just my thoughts, my comments, opinions, predictions, feelings, whatever you want to call it, of this guy. I want to know what you guys think. What do you make of this Tottenham Hotspur side? What do you make of Ange Postecoglu? Do you see this being a continuing spiralling downfall at Spurs, or do you think that Postecoglu will, in fact, adapt to the Premier League and adapt with the squad that he currently possesses, and obviously make changes in future transfer windows to get more strength and depth in that Tottenham side? Let me know your thoughts, your comments, opinions, predictions, feelings, whatever you want to call it, down below for this Tottenham side and for Ange Postecoglu. I'm sure it will make for interesting and great reading. Otherwise, hit the like button on the way up if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new or want to see more content like this. Both things are always greatly appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening. I've been Fletch. This has been another Fletch Talks video, and I will see you all again soon in another video or live stream or whatever it may be. Cheers, guys. Thanks everyone for stopping by. Take care. Speak to you all again soon.